Okay, so I want to go over some things about taking tests in general in the class, and then I'm going to go over this last module 1 quiz that we took. So first of all, when you go to look at your answers on the test, you want to click on where it says first attempt. I can't show you that on my version of it, unfortunately. And then you're going to go ahead and look at your answers. Now, there's a couple things I want to point out here. Just because see right here where it's got the check mark, that means you did it right for the most part. But you'll notice over here, it also tells you how many points you got on it. And I always make them worth 50 points because I believe in paying you in a lot of points. And it gives us some room to give you partial credit on things if we need to. So it seems like a big number, but it's really, really not that big. And I usually make every problem worth the same amount of points because when we go and do an AP test, they're all worth the same amount. So we start that trend now. But you'll notice here, this one's marked with a red X and it looks like it's wrong, but I actually went through and did some partial credit and gave them 40 out of 50 points on it because I probably decided there were some partial points on there. You'll also notice somewhere in there's a place where you can put, sometimes I comment on it, so you might want to see if I left you a comment at all. If it's something really out of the ordinary, then I will have commented. Here you'll notice I wrote no spaces or commas. So what I intended is for you to just type the letters A, C, F, G, no spaces, no commas. Doesn't matter if you do them in caps or not. It'll automatically translate it to caps or no caps. So don't worry about that part. But see, this person, they wrote the letter with the parentheses and a whole bunch of other stuff. All I needed was just those letters written. And if you put spaces or commas in there, it didn't grade it. And sometimes it won't give you the full points because I only gave them one answer. I only typed in one answer. I didn't try to rearrange it or anything. I will go back through and hand do those ones and score them. So again, it might have a red X over there and you have some partial points. You actually got 50 out of 50. So you want to double check your scoring over here to see if you really got it right or wrong. Multiple choice, it'll usually tell you with a check mark if you got it right or wrong. And that's really the only things I wanted to point out on an actual test. The next thing I want to point out is the test numbering. Okay, so on here, you want to make sure you give me that box. You want to make sure you do this exactly the way it looks. Okay, so you make sure that, and I always have a box for your name on there. Sometimes I will make sure you number it in the right order. It should always be held in the portrait way. So the long way, I had a couple people number it the wrong direction. Sometimes I'll give you an arrow, and that means you get to use both boxes for that problem. Okay, so you can spill out of the box, but the rule is you need to keep your problem contained in the box. I know not a lot of them had a lot of work to show, but it's good to write down your answer just in case somehow the computer eats it. Or we have some technological difficulty, then you've at least written it down so you have a copy of it. And I know we had a problem in one of the periods without a graph there. Okay, so that's numbering your paper. Next time we'll probably put module 1 on the front and module 2 on the back. So a couple of other things to remember when you're taking a test, and then I'm going to go over this. And I know I'm going fast. Pause it and rewind it if you need to. I'm waiting for the baby to cry. So you need to fill out the test paper and numbering and turn it in. We had a whole bunch of people not do it on the last test, so we need to make sure that happens. It's going to actually be worth points towards your test grade to fill out the paper and fill it out correctly the next time. You need to actually do the correct color test. So if you've got a yellow paper, you should be doing the yellow test. If you've got a green paper, you should be doing the green test. Next time, if you don't, it's going to be worth 0 points. Okay. There was only 1 or 2 people who didn't have a pencil. If you need a pencil, there's some cruddy pencils in the bucket on the white bookshelf by the back door. You're welcome to borrow those. You need to label the test answer page correctly with the correct numbers. Make sure the numbers are in the right spot, because if I have to grade something, I want my eye to only have to look in the same spot on every paper for number 10. You need to include a place for Mrs. Ballard to write the score, so make sure it's out of however many points. Remember, your score will increase from what you see at the end of the test. So say you saw that you only got 80 out of 500 at the end of the test. Likely there's some things I need to add partial credit to, or it didn't score right, or I gave you it's somehow because you didn't type it exactly the way I typed it. I'm going to add points. So do not freak out when you see that initial score. Know that it's most likely to go up from there. Okay. Next time you're going to take actually 2 separate tests, because that's the easiest way to get the scores to separate. So you'll retake Module 1, and it'll be similar to the current Module 1, and you will take Module 2. The best thing you can do to study for these is try the problems again, okay? And try them on your own, and then go back and look at the answers. For Module 2, try the study guide problems a couple times, okay? You also want to make sure you're showing me your work for partial credit points. If I don't see any work, like I could have given some points on on the number 10, the inverse problem on this last one, but I couldn't because you didn't show any work. You just wrote down something. So I want to see all of your steps, okay? And you also want to show work or write even down just your answer in case something happens to the digital copy. And then in order to see your answers, you're going to click first attempt and type in a password. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and go through this last Module 1 quiz. I'm going to do both kind of answers at the same time and explain what's going on here. So domain means x values. Okay, so I'm only going to do x values. It says interval notation. Interval notation is the parentheses bracket stuff. Okay. Anytime we're doing this, you always start with any of those notations, you always start with the smallest number and you go to the largest number, always. Okay. Largest number. Okay. So, and I'm looking on here, and you go to want to count the hash marks. It's counted to once. So there's -1, -2, 1, 2. So I know that this number here is -2. It's open, so I do a parentheses. So parentheses -2, and then it's going to go all the way to that x value. I'm looking at the x values, not the y values, and 2 and a bracket. This was number 1 was probably the one of the problems that we did fairly well on. All right, let's look at this one here. And you'll notice kind of do a couple of different ways. I'd put some spacing in there, even though you shouldn't put any spaces. This one I did include the comma in it, but definitely if you know, just train yourself not to type any spaces. It'll grade better. You'll get a better score at the end if you don't put any spaces. All right, I'm gonna do the same thing here. -1, -2, 1, 2 on the yellow. So we would have but this time it was reversed. The bracket is first, so it's bracket -2, the smaller number first, to +2 parentheses. All right, here's where the wheels came off the wagon. We needed range. Range is your y values. A lot of you are still listing x values. When we're doing this, you can type this less than or equal to symbol for this if you need it. And just as an inequality, most of us did the inequality. There are a few people who put it in set notation instead. All right, so and again, you want your smallest number first. And then bunch of people didn't type the y, they typed an x instead. It's a y. So I know the y has got to be in the middle for both of them. It looks like, oh, I think I may have had a slight typo on this one, but I didn't see anybody. I think I may have given you credit for something you shouldn't have gotten credit for. All right, so it's starting down here at -2 for that one. And on this one here, it looks like it's starting at 1 to -3. And then this is actually typed in here wrong. I gave you credit for it, though, because most of you did it this way. And if I didn't, I'm sorry. You're going to retake it anyway, so it'll fix on the next score. It should have really been a less than or equal to. Or like this, either way. Because of that closed dot there takes over that open dot. I typed it as just a less than. Okay. Same thing on this one. It should have been a less than or equal to. And then it goes all the way. So this smallest y values here goes all the way up to there, which is a 6. And then this one starts here and goes all the way up to here, which is a 1. All right. We're going to write the domain, and this time we have to use set notation. Remember, domain is x values, and set notation is the curly cues. Most of us understood that curly cue bracket, even though we can't write it. And then it had to be an x in the middle. And then so this one here, remember, we're doing the x values. A lot of us got mixed up and did y values. So because it said a 5 there, some of you were typing 5. Actually 0 is the x value. So 0, and it was a closed dot on that one, so less than or equal to. And then this is the x value, there is the 5, less than 5. And then down here on this one, we had the x value starts at -5, and it was less than because it has an open dot. And then again, we messed this up. We saw the 5 sitting there, but really the x value is 0, less than or equal to 0. Let me talk about partial credit on these because I forgot to do that. So I would have assigned some partial points here. So you would have gotten something. Had you gotten like each one of these here, I would have assigned 10 points too. So if you got 20 points, you got 2 things right. Okay. And then if you got them all right, you got all 50. Okay. Kind of the same thing here on this. I would have taken it into parts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. See how there's 5 different kind of pieces? I would have assigned 10 points to each part. So if you got 30 points, you got 3 of those parts right. Okay. Same idea on this one. I would have probably assigned it in parts. So I probably did 1, 2, 3, 4 for sure. And then the last one is making sure you had both of those x's. That would have been my other 10 points. And making sure it was in set notation. I think very few people didn't write it in set notation. So that's so if you see partial points, you make sure you have all the parts 100% correct. You probably missed something somewhere. All right. So these were similar, but not quite. They're not quite the same. Remember, so if we have our generic form here, y equals a. There was a b on the inside sometimes, x minus h squared plus k. Okay. Anything on the outside has to do with vertical. So either a vertical compression or a vertical stretch. Anything on the inside has to do with horizontal. So that's a horizontal stretch or compression. So I should not have had anything horizontal on either one of these because nothing was on the inside. So I shouldn't have had horizontal stretch. I shouldn't have had horizontal compression. This sign here, you remember you have to change it when you come in or out of parentheses. So change sign when you come in or out of parentheses, or now we know absolute value bars. Okay. And this one on the outside, we keep sign. Okay. And then if there's a negative in front, that's what makes it reflect on the y-axis. Nope, sorry, not y-axis, the x-axis. If the negative's on the inside, that's where the reflection is across the y-axis. So we didn't have the y-axis reflection. So they were both negative in front, so we knew it had to be a reflection A. A lot of us got that piece right. Then the 3 in front or the 2 in front meant it was a vertical. But between the stretch and the compression, on the vertical, the stretch has to be, your number has to be greater than 1. The compression, the number has to be between 0 and 1. So it has to be between 0 and 1. Okay. So because those numbers were both greater than 1, we know that it had to be a vertical stretch. And then the translation. So we have to change the sign. So on the green test, it was a negative. The change of sign would be a -1, which is a leftward movement. So it's C. This change in sign would have been a +1. So it's a rightward movement. So it's a D. This one, we keep the sign. So this one's going to go down 5. And this one's also going to go down 5. And then if I basically gave you 10 points for each one, 50 if you got all of them. So if you missed, every one you got partial credit on, it was 10 points. If you got a 30, that means you got 3 of them right. All right, which of the following best describes the transformation of the red graph to the blue graph? So I have to go from the red to the blue. And really all I'm looking at here is looking at a translation. Notice one of them had a negative in front, so that one didn't do any reflecting. So really what I would do is I would take this 0.00 and I would count. And remember, when it's the x value, it's going to swap signs, and the y value is going to keep signs. So I would count I would find out where that new that point in the center is. So let's see, if I'm going to go in the x direction, 1, 2. So it looks like it goes +2 in the x, but I got a swap sign, so it'd be -2 on the inside. So it's got to be that one there. And then it count 1, 2, 3, and then it has to be down 3. So it's got to be down 3 on the outside. Here, to go from that to that. I'm going to go 1, 2 to the, so I'm counting 2 in the negative direction, but remember it has to switch sign, so it's got to be +2. So notice I have a +2 right there. And then I'm going down 1, 2, 3. So it went down 3. So it's got to definitely be that one there. All right, here we're talking about increasing in both of them. So we're looking at increasing, meaning the graph has to be going up. And that's going up from left to right. So as I'm going from left to right, I need to know where my graph is going up. Here, it's going up one time. I should have one answer. Here on the yellow test, it's going up here and it's going up here. I should have two answers. Some of us had more answers or some of us had less answers. So you need to be careful. Make sure you know where it's going up. All right, so the increase here, so if I need to figure out, it looks like this is scaled in 1. So 1, 2. So something between 1 and 2 looks like 1.7. So I'm going to start at 1.7 and I'm going to go until I hit 0. So it's got to just be C, and you would have just typed a C. Here for my increase, it looks like it's starting at negative infinity. So I have to start at negative infinity. So it's one of those two maybe. And then it ends at 0. So it's definitely B. Oh boy, that was a bummer. Something went wrong there. And then it was going from, let's see, it says 1, 2, so it's like 1.7 to infinity, so it should have been E. So it looks like it should have been B and E. So it looks like I've got a mistake. I probably need to go back and look at your tests again here. All right. And then this one says we're decreasing, okay? And again, no spaces, no commas, so you're not supposed to type any spaces or commas in there. So decreasing means we're going down. So this one's going down here and here. There should be 2 letter choices, and this one's going down just one place. All right, so it looks like I'm going, and remember, it's from the x value that's to the most to the left is negative infinity. So that's where we're starting, and it looks like we're going between 1 and 2, so 1.7, so A. And then this one picks up at 0 and goes to the x value would be positive infinity, so A and E. On this one, we're starting at 0. And we're going to between 1 and 2 again, so it must be this 1.7. So it's going to 1.7. All right, on this one here, it was just which of the following best describes how to find the inverse of a function. You do not just change the notation. That was one of the popular answers. Really what you want to do, the big key thing was that we had to switch the x and the y values and solve for y, then replace the notation with the f inverse notation. Most of us did okay on that one. There were a few of us that got it wrong. All right, a lot of you fell into the trap. The best thing we can do, we know that the key to inverses is to switch x and y. All right, so I would write this out. A lot of you just read and you messed it up. So we've got 3, -2. Then the next one would be -1, 0. And the next one would be 5, 3. And it looks like this was the same problem on both of them. Now, what you read was this one right here matched here. But look at this. It does not match. They didn't flip the x and y. And a lot of people were picking this answer, and it's incorrect. It was this answer where they all flipped, but the points were in the wrong order. So you need to be really, really, really careful. It doesn't matter what order the points are in as long as the x and the y values are switched. All right, this was probably the worst problem on the entire test. We're going to do this. I'm going to do both of these problems. I'd pay attention to both of them, no matter what version you have. And then we're going to do a couple more on the next page, and I would probably pause the video and try them first and then see how you did, okay? Because you're going to have to do this, and this is was one of the important skill you needed to learn out of this module. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to switch the notation to a y. So we're going to say y equals -1/2 x minus 3. We're not going to follow what the book says because you didn't get it that way, so obviously, so you need to switch x and y. So we're going to switch x and y. We've got x equals -1/2 y minus 3. Now we're going to get y by itself. Get y by itself. All right, so I'm going to take that 3 and I'm going to add it to both sides. So we get x plus 3 equals negative 1/2 y. Then in order to undo the division that's right there, we're going to multiply. Okay, so we've got negative 2x plus 3 equals y. I would have taken that as an answer. Okay, there were some of you that had it typed, but it wasn't exactly what I had, so it didn't grade it, and you didn't show me your work. You didn't prove it to me, so I didn't give you the points on it. Okay, and then you could have distributed that in negative 2x, x minus 6 equals y. And I had it already typed there for you. The f inverse of x equals negative 2x minus 6. You could have written it backwards. That's also okay. And again, try not to put spaces in anything. It'll grade it better. Okay. All right, let's do it again. So we're going to do another one with a fraction in front. Then we're going to do others on the next page, a couple more, just to practice. So we're going to switch that to a y. So y equals negative 1/2 x minus 4. The key is to switch x and y. So we're going to switch our x and our y. I'm going to take that y or that 4 and add it to the other side. Then we got to isolate y, get it by itself. It's right now under division. I'm going to switch to multiplication. So negative 2x plus 4 equals negative y. Oops, not negative y, positive y. We moved the negative over. And then I would probably distribute that through. So negative 2x minus 8 equals y. And then you rewrite it as an inverse in inverse notation. And again, you could have done negative 8 minus 2x. That's fine. Okay, so let's try a couple more of those. Let's say I don't put a fraction out front. Let's put, I'm just going to put example 1 here. Let's say we're going to have f of x equals 2x plus 6. Okay, so the first thing we're supposed to do is convert this to a y. And actually what I would do is pause the video, try switching your x and y, and then come back and see if you get the right answer. Okay, so hopefully you've tried it on your own. We're going to switch our x and our y. That's the big key to it. And then I'm going to go ahead and subtract the 6 over. And now we're going to divide by 2. That's a perfectly good answer. If I was typing something like that in, I would type it in like this, and then hit that slashy key and 2. Okay. You could also split the fraction up. 1/2 x minus 6 divided by 2 is 3. So equals y. That's okay to write in, to type in as well. And then remember, you're supposed to switch it to an inverse. So I actually probably prefer that one over the other one. All right, let's do another one. So I want you to try this one on your own. So try this one on your own. Once I write it up there, pause the video. So f of x equals, let's say, 8x minus 1. Everybody pause the video, try it. Okay, hopefully you tried it. So I'm going to first start by converting that to a y first. So 8x minus 1. Then the key to inverses is switching x and y. So I'm going to switch my x and my y. I'm going to add the 1 over. And I'm going to divide by the 8 because it was under multiplication. All right, and then I'd probably switch to my inverse, back to my inverse notation. The other way you could have written this as 1/8 x plus 1/8, which I think is kind of silly because you end up with the 2 fractions. So I would probably prefer this answer right here. Okay, so for tomorrow, I would re-practice these problems because you're going to see ones just like this again, and then I'd make sure you practice the homework that was assigned today as the practice for the Module 2 part of the assessment.